Hello, BookTube. We're back for another episode of Desert Island Books with Matt at Science Fiction Reads. Hello, Matt, and thanks for
Hi,
coming on.
thanks for having
So tell us something about your channel.
me. Well, it's about a year old now. I think I started it. And it's basically just science fiction I read, old and new. Um, I'd say about half my videos are book hauls, and the other half are just talking about what I've read lately. And I tend to read mostly hard SF and space opera, I would say. That's
Well,
about it.
I like when you said that you read the older stuff as well. So that
Yeah,
fits in for me.
seems to be what a lot of people like who comment on my video talking about the older stuff that I'm reading. So, and the old stuff is the good stuff.
Yes, it definitely is. So you've got 8 picks here to 8 books to take on the desert island. I guess we can just jump in and start with the first one.
Um, yes, I'd like to think that my shuttle has broken up in orbit. Somehow I made it down to the surface. I swam, I found an island, and my only luggage is my books.
Well,
So,
that's the first one because usually everybody thinks of just a ship that you.
oh no,
Well, yeah,
it's
that
got
makes sense for you. Yeah.
on. So I don't know. I took some damage. Somehow I survived, and I swam to this multi-dimensional desert of yours. So, my first pick is probably the book I have the least to say about, only because I haven't read much of it. But it seems like a very obvious choice. It's the big book of science fiction. I think one or two of your previous guests have chosen this. And it's edited by Jeff Vandermeer and I believe his wife.
Yeah.
And it really is absolutely massive. I think it starts with H.G. Wells and it goes right up to modern day. But it's got everybody you could imagine. Arkady and Boris Strugatsky, Frederick Pohl, Ursula Le Guin, Silverberg, Joanna Russ, Gene Wolfe. Octavia Butler's Bloodchild is in here. Have you read much Octavia Butler?
A little bit. Yeah, I do want to read more of her. Definitely at
Oh,
some point.
her Xenogenesis trilogy,
Yeah.
I think, is also called Lilith's Brood. Really good. But the short story Bloodchild was maybe one of the first science fiction short stories I read as an adult before I even really liked it. And it was creepy, but it blew me away. So, yeah, this seems like an obvious choice and it's massive. Maybe eventually I could use it to keep a fire going. I don't know, or beat away crabs.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in there. It's like I remember I used it last year for New Worlds November, and I got back into reading some Edmund Hamilton, that's in there, and I like it's part of his. There's I think there's 4 or 5 or 6 stories that are he's right at the beginning. I think.
Yeah, you were talking about Edmund Hamilton, I don't know, 6 months ago, and I don't remember the details of the story, but it really intrigued me, and I haven't found a copy of that story yet. Maybe it was about a sun being moved by an alien race or something. I can't remember, but it was really intriguing.
It's in there. It's in there. That's the one. Yeah, it's the one in there. Yeah.
So obviously, I didn't do my research because I already own it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. All right.
And it also has we have to mention, since it's science fiction, it also has Clifford Simak in there as well.
Yeah, it's got everybody. Cordwainer Smith is in there. Um, yeah.
And even some not so good ones for more recent ones, but we'll pass that by.
Yeah. Well, there's not much, not a lot of good recent stuff, really, that I've read anyway. So that's my first pick. My second pick, we're going way back to one of the earliest science fiction books I read. I think I read this in 2015 or 16. It's Olaf Stapleton's Star Maker.
Yeah.
So this was written in maybe 36. It was the
Yeah, 30s. Yeah.
37. Um, and it just blew my mind. I guess I hadn't read a lot of science fiction at the time, but I had read enough that I was shocked that a lot of that tropey stuff was in here and probably came here first. Like, I think this has some of the earliest of a multiverse. It's got like, I guess you could call it a hive mind, because the whole thing is about a human man's consciousness kind of floats up into space. He meets other disembodied consciousness, and they kind of grow and merge. So sort of a hive mind on a universal scale. And that alone was fascinating. But it's got several examples of world building and examples of evolution, and as they visit different planets and learn about different species, and then meet the Star Maker at the end. I was
Yeah.
just fascinated by it. And I think,
Sentient,
pardon?
there's like sentient nebulas in there too.
I don't think there are. I think you're referring to what was cut out, which I have handy right here.
Oh, okay.
I think
That's how good my memory is.
I believe because I read this a few months ago, Nebula Maker, and I think it's the stuff that was cut from Star Maker, if I have that right. And it was published posthumously, and it's very short. I was going to mention it, but I'll just talk about it now. It's a lot of the same stuff, but it just involves the fictional galactic history of nebulas, their evolution, and their culture. And it was really, really good, fascinating, with just a couple individuals highlighting their stories in history, but really, really cool. I see why.
Sorry, there's a bit of a delay occasionally. How did you sort of discover it? Because he's not he's still popular, but
Yeah,
is it just that you picked it up with a bunch of stuff, or how did you
I
find it?
found Star Maker in a used bookstore, and I just thought the cover art was absolutely amazing. And I forget, I was going to do a paperback parade on this cover artist. I'm not going to find his name. Oh, David Pelham, who did a lot of cover art for Penguin. Lots of classic stuff like A Clockwork Orange. I think he did the cover art for one of those editions of that. But I found it early on, and it sat on my shelf for maybe a year. And then I looked him up, did a little research, and I thought, this guy's kind of important to the history of SF. And I think there's a Arthur C. Clarke quote where he said something like, it's probably the most powerful work of imagination ever written. And I thought, geez, Arthur C. Clarke said that? And I think that's what made me take it off the shelf. And then I was blown away when I read it. I think a lot of people don't care for the ending, but I thought it was awesome. Where they meet the Star Maker and kind of learn that they're part of a multiverse sort of thing. And I think with the exception, that's the only thing I've read by him other than Nebula Maker. I tried last.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get into it. Although I have read since then that you should skip the first part because it's tedious.
Which one's that? Sorry, you.
Last and First Men.
Oh yeah, I like that one. Yeah.
I want to read it, but I got to give it another go. So that's probably the oldest choice I have on here. But yeah, I chose that because the effect it had on me. I think it's really important to the genre, how it kind of predicted a lot of the stuff that you find in modern day science fiction.
Yeah, well, he said that he never wrote science fiction. I think.
Oh,
I think, yeah, he says that he didn't like being labeled as a science fiction writer, and it's like,
one of those.
But you are, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like everybody is borrowed from it, and it's not your sort of typical sort of story with characters and lots of dialogue and everything. It's basically a history in a sense. It's like it's written like most of his stuff is written almost as if it's a history.
Yeah, a lot of his stuff is future histories, which I have an interest in. I like science fiction future histories, and I have a couple of those coming up, I guess. Yeah, I guess we'll move on to my third pick here.
Okay.
Which is something I heard about on your channel, I think when you were talking to Scott Danielson. And maybe it was one of his picks, or maybe he just referred to it. I can't remember. It's an anthology, The Hard SF Renaissance by David Hartwell and Catherine Kramer. And I've since collected two more of theirs, one on space opera and another one on hard SF. But this seems like an obvious choice for me because as I've been reading science fiction over the past, I think, 7 years, I've really come to nail down that hard SF and space opera is definitely my thing. But I had never thought about specifically searching up hard SF anthologies. And this is really, really good, I have to say.
Yeah, it's one of the better ones. He's a really, really good editor. And he the stuff that he picks, it's better. He's a better editor than the Jeff Vandermeer. Jeff Vandermeer and his wife, or Anne, I think it is. They do like they like the check box, or is that the right term? Checking boxes of making sure they have everything representative, rather than the quality of the writing at times.
Right.
And Hartwell and Kramer, I think she's taken over for a lot of the stuff because he's dead now. And there used to be a yearly one that they did.
Oh, did they did a yearly one? Oh, I don't think I even knew that.
Something like that. I'm pretty sure that they did something that was I think it was a yearly for a while.
Okay.
I might be mistaken, but I think they did, yeah. But she's done some stuff separately now since he died.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely interested in tracking down more of their collections because there's some really obscure stuff in here that is like really good hard SF. But some of the highlights here, like Robert Reed, an author I had never read, I don't think. He had a short story in here called Marrow, which he turned into a novel later and a series, which I want to read. But that one was really good about humanity discovers like a Jovian-sized artifact. And they don't know what it's for, but they basically at the galactic cruise ship, just travel around the galaxy collecting people, different races. They live there. But then one day some human explorers discover that there's actually a planet at the center of the structure. They go down to the surface and some stuff happens. It was really good. The science was cool. It was very dark, but I like long time scale stories, and that one certainly had some jumps, thousands of years here and there. It was really good. I'm very curious about his other science fiction.
Yeah, I don't think I've read too much of him at all. If I've read anything, the name sort of is vaguely familiar, but yeah, I can't sort of pinpoint anything.
I never really heard him mentioned anywhere on BookTube, that is. And then Greg Egan has a great one in here called Wang's Carpets, where
Yeah.
they're very post-human. The people are basically digital, and they discover a water world with nothing but floating vegetation, and there's a big argument about whether or not it's sentient, and it turns out to potentially be like a Turing device or a mass distributed brain. Really out there. Greg Egan's like really good hard SF. And I've read, I think, 80% of this.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I was hoping to finish it by the end of the year, but I've got too many other things I want to read. So that seemed like another obvious choice. And what's his other one that they did? The Ascent of Wonder. I'm going to read that coming year. More hard SF.
Yeah, that one I think, or one of them are chronologically done. I think I can't remember which one it is.
I don't think that one. Might have been the other one.
Yeah, it must be Ascent. I think is chronological, which is kind of interesting to see it, because I think that's why it's called the Ascent.
Yeah.
So, and it's interesting just to see how things changed and developed, and that's kind of neat.
Yeah. All right. That was that 2? So number 3 is my favorite novel, which some might be surprised it's not fiction, although it has science fiction elements, and that would be China Miéville's Perdidos. I recently got this very nice first edition. Whoops.
Wow.
This book, I think you either love it or hate it. It's basically an excellent exercise in world building. And I wish I could remember how I first came across it. I don't know how I heard about this, but I do remember I wanted to read it so bad that I found a PDF of it on the computer online, and I just read it on my computer screen. I didn't have an e-reader or anything. I didn't even have a cell phone at the time. So I read the whole thing as a PDF, um, and it really blew me away. And really, the star of this book is just the city that it takes place in. The world building is incredible. And I know that you want to read it. Do you not?
Yeah, I do because I've heard so much about it. So I'm hoping I'm still looking. I keep saying I'm looking for the next Hyperion high because I like Hyperion so much that
Yeah,
looking for something else that gives me that kind of feeling.
right. Yeah. And Hyperion gave me a similar feeling, but I think I read this first, so this is just probably stuck as my all-time favorite. Um, and the plot is good and everything, but just the world building, like for some reason, even though this is like it's a depressing, it's kind of like a police state. It's not a great place to live, but I love being there. I've read it twice, and I might even read it again this year. And there's two sequels, loose
Ooh,
sequels. They take place in the
okay.
same. And he also has a novella called This Census Taker, and there's some Easter eggs in there that let you know that it's actually taking place in the same world as this, which is pretty neat if you can put those together and think, oh, I see what you did there. This is actually part of the Boss Leg series. Boss Leg is the continent that it takes place on, but it's basically dark fantasy, but there are science fiction elements. The main character is kind of this scientist slash university professor, and he's working on some very out there science, trying to learn about unified field theory. If he can figure out how everything works and put it all together, he thinks he can tap some sort of energy source and have unlimited energy. And the story starts with this outcast from another culture showing up on his doorstep and asking for his help, um, making him able to fly again because this guy is like a half bird man and he's lost his wings for some sort of crime he committed that he won't talk about. And so it's really about this scientist, Isaac, trying to help this guy fly again by whatever means, whether it's some sort of crazy science or grafting wings back onto him. And they accidentally unleash a terrible evil on the world that they live on in. And they team up and try to put an end to what they've done.
Yeah, well, I've heard nothing but praise about it, but then I
Yeah.
heard nothing but praise about something else, a short story that I read
Uh,
by what's his Ted Chiang. So, and I didn't think too much of it.
yeah.
Didn't
Well, I hear, I see reviews of China Mevel, and I can see why people don't like it. You do have to get used to his reading style, similar to William Gibson. Like, I
Mm.
like it. Difficult to read his stuff. Um, China Mevel uses lots of words. You're going to need a thesaurus and a dictionary when you're reading his stuff, but he puts together a pretty great story. Another good book of his was King Rat, which might have been his first published book, which is about a kid who finds out his real father is like this half rat, reclusive guy who lives in the sewers of London and has power over the rats. It's really out there, but really good.
Mm.
Really cool stuff.
Same name as the
Yeah, there is another book.
James Clavell novel. That's part of the Shogun series, King Rat, I think it is.
Yeah, yes, I have seen that on online. But yeah, Perdido Street Station, my favorite book. Had to use that for the world building and the characters. And there is some science fiction in there, so it's still close to my heart for that too.
Well, if you're gonna read it again sometime in 2023, if it's sort of after the first quarter, I might be ready to do that. So if you
It would have to be a little later in the year, but probably, yeah, I would be willing to do that. Um, All right, my next choice, another collection of short stories and something I read fairly recently. It is Cordwainer Smith's The Rediscovery of Man. I've got this awesome Nespa press, which you can't see because of the the Bro Dart jacket I got on there. So this I chose because obviously it's a future history. I love future histories, but this one is just so unique and different, right? His stories are almost like fables. Um, and I like how something that happens in one of his short stories kind of becomes legend in another story that takes place in the future, and you'll have references to characters and events. Um, and there's nothing really like Cordwainer Smith that I've read, and I'm sure you must have read plenty of his Instrumentality
Yeah.
Man.
I've not read everything. I have that as well. I'm just sort of looking at it here now myself, and I'm going to read it through, and also his novel as well in Australia, North Australia.
Yeah, lots of references. Some of the stories here are connected to Australia too. Um, the Ballad of Lost Camel. That's kind of like a prequel story to Australia. So you might be interested in reading the story before you read the book. Because yeah, I think there's three characters that appear in that short story that take place or reoccur in Australia. And I think his best stories are the ones that kind of involve the under people, which are like the genetically engineered. They're half animal, half people, and they're basically the lower class that do all the hard labor. But the stories that involve them slowly over hundreds or thousands of years, kind of gaining recognition and rights, usually covertly with the help of, the lords and ladies of the instrumentality who are supposed to not care about these things because they're the working class. But there's usually a sympathetic character high up that covertly helps them, which is really neat. Yeah, there's just nothing like this. His stuff is so great. And there's that story about how uh, he had all his notes in a notebook.
Yeah.
And there's two stories. He either left it on a table in a restaurant or he lost it over a boat while he was fishing. And he stopped writing for a period of years in this world. And I think he went back eventually, but then he died sort of young. So there's a lot we didn't get. He could
Yeah,
have fleshed it out more.
yeah, he's an interesting character because he did a lot of stuff on what was it, psychological warfare or something like that.
Yeah. His one book is still like the go-to on psychological warfare, or at least was a decade or two ago. His history is super fascinating. How he lived in China and all the government work he did. Very interesting guy.
And he's written, like, there's a couple non science fiction novels that he did, some of his first stuff, I think, as
Yeah,
well.
like
I've
SP
never read those.
stuff. I think. I think they're under a different name too. I don't.
Yeah, one of them. Yeah, one of them. I think. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, they're maybe under two different names. Yeah, that might be right. Yeah,
Yeah, I think he
yeah,
had multiple names. So another
yeah,
cool thing about this is at the back. First of all, these are, as best as the publisher could figure out, the stories are in chronological order, which is really cool because you kind of see his future history grow. But at the back of the book, 3 or 4 science fiction stories that he wrote that don't take place in this universe, and those were kind of interesting as well. Very different. I didn't care for them as much, but yeah, really glad I have this. And I know Scott from the Bookish Bryants, he plans to read this soon, or already is maybe.
yeah. He just got it. Yeah, yeah. Because I just got my copy as well. A month ago, I guess, maybe. I think sometime around then.
Yeah, I only got mine in the last few months, as well as in Australia, and read them both. And I heard about Cordwainer Smith in the back of an Alistair Reynolds collection. I think his Galactic North collection. He mentions one of those stories as one of his favorites. So for years, I've always thought I have to read Cordwainer Smith because Reynolds is my favorite author for science fiction. And I finally got to it, and I could see why. And I could see the influence too. They write very different things, but some of the same themes, same ideas are in there.
Yeah, with my like I for some reason it's just I've started getting interested in him again because I you through YouTube well BookTube you hear people talk about things and it sort of reminded me go oh yeah
Yeah,
I liked that person, I liked that writer, and that's happened a few times, and that's the bad thing about BookTube. It just reminds me of stuff.
and there's just too much to read too. My TBR just grows, and every time any of the people I watch mention something, it's almost always something I'm willing to read and interested in. So it's not helpful.
No, it's a danger.
Okay, my next choice here is one of my favorite books that absolutely blew me away, but it's been so long since I read it. There's not a lot I can say about it. Um, but it's Stargate by Pauline Gedge. I've gone on and on about it in the past on my channel. Um, I think it's the only science fiction she wrote because she writes historical fiction. I know she writes like Egyptian stories.
Yeah.
I don't know if she's written much else historical wise.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar because I know I've read at least one, something about Hatshepsut, and I think she wrote a few, like set at that period. But yeah, she's a Canadian writer, and just for everybody to know, that's nothing to do with the
Yes.
Stargate film or the series.
Yes. What year did this come out? I know it was. It came out before. Yeah, 1982. It came out before the Stargate franchise was a thing. Um, I saw this a picture of this online, and I thought I don't care what it's about. I have to have it for the cover art. And what it is an epic science fantasy that's one of the few books that had me tear up a couple times. It was very sad, very depressing, but very emotional, and with a lot of hope at the end too. But it's kind of an early universe tale where humanity is kind of still in contact with the gods. Um, there's an overarching god who kind of created everything, and then he assigned one god to each solar system called Sun Lords. And after thousands of years, the god who created everything suddenly has turned vengeful, and he's feeding information to various Sun Lords, kind of like forbidden knowledge, and it's corrupting them and corrupting their solar systems. And one by one, the gods are becoming corrupted, and so their solar system kind of fails, their people die out. And so it's really the story about the last remaining Sun Lords getting together and trying to save their worlds, because nothing can be done for the ones that are already lost. So there's a lot of loss, a lot of heartbreak, and it blew me away. Nobody ever talks about it. I've never heard anyone mention it. Aside from me, I know a couple people who follow my channel have bought a copy. I don't know if they've read it yet, but I hope they have it. Where they do, I hope they like it. Um, yeah, it was recently uh, put back into print, I think in 2016, so it's not impossible to get.
Oh, okay.
And it just had me blown away. It's called Stargate because the Sun Lords travel to each other's solar systems by just walking through a gate. Um, but as each world becomes corrupted, they shut that gate down and lock those solar systems away for all time. So it's very dark and sad. But I would love to get more people to read this, so I had somebody to talk to about it.
Yeah, I don't think I've read that one. I don't remember reading it, but I'm aware of it. I think she's still alive as well, isn't she?
Yeah, I don't know.
I think she.
I don't know if she's still publishing recently, but occasionally I see her historical fiction in bookstores, and I've bought a few from bookstores. So I want to read her stuff about Egypt because I also love history, and I love the Egyptians. So that stuff would be interesting. And I read on her website that she considers Stargate the favorite of her own books, and as far as I know, it's the only science fiction she published. So that's interesting.
Yeah, and you kind of wonder if the writers of the Stargate film didn't have like they were aware of that because
Oh
it
yeah,
there are things that are like I like I say, I haven't read the book, but I know the story of it, and there are a lot of things that are similar, and they must have pulled from it, I would think, but I've
Yeah,
never
there,
looked into it.
I think there might be an Andre book called Stargate 2 or something, but certainly there's a lot of instances of basically Stargates in fiction. But uh, I do like that came before the franchise. It's its own thing.
She should have sued them.
Oh god. All right, my next choice here is another obvious one. I've mentioned Alastair Reynolds is my favorite author for science fiction, so I chose his largest collection, Beyond the Aquila Rift, his short fiction. Um, he's my favorite author because when I first started reading science fiction, he's one of the first people I read, and I read uh, Revelation Space, which obviously he's most well known for. It was a trilogy originally. Well, no, he's got the trilogy, and then there's another novel that fits in between. And again, it's kind of a future history, um, probably about 500 years in the future, and then it goes on and on, the various stories. But there's a lot of short stories in that universe. Some are in here, but there's also, he writes tons of short fiction. So there's just tons of stuff in here. His stuff is borderline horror at times, very gothic, very dark. Great space opera, but he also has lots of hard SF stories as well.
I've only read the Revelation Space about 7-8 years ago, I think it was, and I want to read more of him. And well, we are this coming week. We're reading the 2 novellas, I think.
Yes, we are reading Diamond Dogs and Turquoise Days, which was also some of the first stuff I read. Diamond Dogs is in this. I don't think Turquoise Days is. But yeah, I believe both of them take place in the Revelation Space universe.
You've got pretty well everything, I think. I think you've shown on your
I
channel.
think you can see half of it. I have everything, all of his books, aside from a Doctor Who book he wrote, which I did buy once, and then
Doctor Who?
he wrote a Doctor Who. Yeah, it's called Harvest of Time.
Oh.
I ordered it once, and then they emailed me back and said they didn't have it in stock. So it's the only book of his I don't have, I believe. I've got all of his somewhat hard to find Subterranean Press edition and everything. His short fiction is really good. The only thing I will say is sometimes he's not great at wrapping up a story. And you'll find that online, a lot of reviews saying great stuff, but the ending was not great. But where are we here? He actually just wrote another book in the Revelation Space universe, Inhibitor Phase. So this after the original trilogy, and that's 20-ish years after Revelation Space was published in 2000, and this was published last year. So I'm hoping he continues because, as you know, in the Revelation Space universe, humanity is fighting the Inhibitors, which is this machine race that seems to be the answer to the Fermi paradox. They just eliminate all organic life every few turns of the galaxy, let's say. And yeah, I'm hoping he continues with it. He did a live interview with Adrian Tchaikovsky once last year, and I asked, like, are you going to keep writing? And he said if the ideas come, and he would like to. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely going to reread Revelation Space and go through that because I'm just in a phase now looking for stuff that's uh, with archaeology in it, and I remember that had at least something in it, so I'm going to reread that.
Yeah, definitely. It literally starts at an archaeological dig. Yeah, I like Alastair Reynolds because he deals with like deep time, similar to Stephen Baxter, but also with like old races, and a lot of his stuff does have archaeological elements to it. So, and I love a good story about old race or elders.
But isn't doesn't he have a scientific background, or I'm thinking
Yeah,
somebody else?
for the European Space Agency, I believe. I can't remember exactly what it was he did, and I think he was writing short stories while he worked there, and then eventually went to full time writing stories. He had some sort of, it was a big deal at the time, a contract with Golance. Didn't he get a few $1 million for a 10-book contract or something? It was. I remember it was a big deal. It was before I was reading fiction, but I've read about it. And he
So yeah,
came.
what? So was well, what's his first? Is Revelation Space his first novel, or?
I think that was his novel, yeah. But he had published short stories here and there. I think in Interzone, the magazine.
Yeah, yeah, it's a British science fiction magazine.
Yeah. Um, and yeah, he's published. I can't remember now how much is in the Revelation Space universe, but it continues to grow. I love future histories. I've got Neil Asher has, I guess you could call it a future history. They all take place in the same few hundred years, but got all of those too. But I'm not as well read on him as I am with Reynolds.
I guess have you? I need to ask. Have you read the Isaac Asimov future history, like the robots and all?
Well, not all of it. No. Um, I remember when you first started the Future History Project, I thought I'm going to go along with this, but then I was like, I don't have half the stuff. I started buying Asimov, but there's so much. But I have read, of course, the Foundation books. Yeah, I read Foundation and Earth. Some of the robot books I've read. Some of what's his other series that he tied in?
The Empire novels.
Yeah, I have tons of his books, but I've only read here and there. I haven't read them in order or anything, but
Yeah, I'm still going through now. Well, I read. I'm excuse me. I've been reading all the non Asimov stuff that's been the shared or pastiche.
yes,
Yeah.
recently mentioned an anthology that had a Pamela Sargent story because I wanted to read it. You told me the book it was in, and it was in the collection that I got rid of like last year. I did own.
Friends. Yeah.
Yeah, I did have a copy. I no longer have it, I don't think. Just frustrating. But like our Pebble in the Sky, Caves of Steel, those are in the future history, are they not?
Yeah, the Caves of Steel is robot, sort of still robot novels, and Pebble in the Sky is the
Right.
Empire trilogy.
Yeah. So I've read plenty, but here and there, haphazard, all over the place. Yeah, now you got me really wanting to go back and read those. I'd like to read the robot books in order. I have all of them. I must.
Yeah, like what's the thing? You can definitely miss all the non Asimov stuff. I just thought it would be kind of interesting to do it,
Yeah.
uh, and some of it's been painful. Some of it's been painful. Uh, but yeah, it's about the fourth time I think that I've read the whole series through his stuff. Yeah.
So did you check out the recent Foundation TV show?
I haven't seen that yet. I do want to see it, but I haven't heard good things about it.
No.
Want to check it.
I watched the first two episodes, and I can't remember why I didn't continue, but I guess that says it all. It wasn't good enough, I guess.
Yeah, I will look at it because I'm interested in that. But I think they must be already in their second season now. I think, but
Oh, probably, yeah.
yeah. Anyway, that's enough Asimov. Then the next thing we'll be talking about is Simak.
Oh, yes. I'm gonna pull out a stack of them and pretend that those were all my choices, but I forgot to do that. So we must be on my final number 8. Yeah.
Is it already? Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, we're flying through here. So my 8th choice is way out there. It's nothing to do with science fiction, but I chose it for nostalgic purposes. If I'm going to be stuck on this island, I would like something nostalgic from my childhood because I'm a very nostalgic person. So I've chose something. I was not reading this as a child, but I was watching the TV show related to it. This is a 1936 Rupert Annual, which is not popular over in Canada, but I gather is a big deal over in the UK. Um, so the Rupert Bear comic started in the 1920 in the Daily Express newspaper and still goes today. Like 102 years later, there's still, I don't know if it's daily or weekly, but there's still, a comic strip. So then in the 30s, they started compiling, like, I guess the best of the year, maybe, sort of thing. But in the 90s, there was a cartoon in Canada of with Rupert Bear, and I just loved. It was like my happy place. It's just Rupert and his friends in this little nutwood forest, and there's always these fantastical adventures. So then, as an adult, I was reminded of the cartoon, and I started looking into it, and I discovered, oh, Rupert was actually a comic book. So I bought one randomly online from I think the 50s, and I read it, and I really liked it. I really liked the artwork, and then I learned about Alfred Bestel, which was the guy who took over from the original artist, I think in 1935, and he illustrated the Rupert stuff until the 70s. And I just fell in love with his art. So then I started collecting Rupert annuals, and now there's been one every year since the 36, and I have I think 47 of them, which
Wow.
I've never mentioned them on the channel, but it's quite the collection, and they're not cheap. Especially this one. If you can find this in mint condition, it sells for thousands of dollars. But this is not in good condition. But they're just this one's practically cardboard pages, but yeah, just little stories, little comics. But in the I think around the 40s up until the 70s, when Alfred Bestel was illustrating them, they became smaller. Oh, I got a little sticker on there, but nice wraparound art. But the insides just have his amazing illustrations, and I just fell in love with his art, so I started collecting them. This one's from, I think, definitely from the 40s, but yeah. So every now and then, when I'm in the mood, I'll just grab one of these old books and read through the comics. Most of these I've had to order online and get over from the UK. They often have inscriptions, like somebody wrote an inscription to their grandchild in the 50s on this one, and I love
Yeah.
that. So cool. The hard ones to get are from the 40s because there was a paper shortage due to the war.
Yeah.
I think one or two of them, but so I'm a big Rupert Bear fan, and in 2019, I was off work for 4 months with an injury, and I had nothing to do. And I knew that in 2020, it would be the 100-year anniversary of Rupert Bear. And I don't know why I got this idea in my head, but I thought I'm going to build the Rupert Bear cottage, which features heavily in the stories in the show. It's his house, basically, his family's home. I'm going to build it out of Lego, and I'm going to post some pictures online. Maybe somebody will see it and appreciate it. So I did that. I built it. And I discovered this group online called the Followers of Rupert, which is based out of the UK. And it's basically just a fan group. But they have a newsletter in the form of like a magazine that they send out 4 or 5 times a year. And I posted my little story about how I got introduced to Rupert and how I had built this model to their Facebook page. And then they liked it. They published it in their book, in their magazine. And so I have almost a full page, my little model here, a little write-up I did for it.
Wow.
And so I could say I'm published. I'm a published author here of a little article. So this was in 2020, and it's just so cool. 2 weeks after I built the model, it was sitting on a shelf, and it was a massive model of the cottage. The cat jumped on it, knocked it over, destroyed it. So the only thing I have left is the actual house, the cottage. I kept that. It's on a shelf in another room, but the landscape was completely destroyed. But yeah, these are just kind of my happy place. If I've had like a rough week, I'll just pull one of these out. Even though these stories have been being published for 100 years, the world of Rupert Bear is kind of perpetually locked in the 30s. So it's 30s technology, driving around old cars, and sometimes they're solving mysteries. it's just really feel good stuff, and I think I would want it on my desert island.
Well, you're gonna have to do some videos on your collection of that. You're gonna
Yeah,
have to do that. Like, I know you do science fiction, but do something
well,
different.
I had wondered if there'd be any interest because, first of all, I looked first on YouTube, and it was a few months ago. I looked; there was no videos that I could find of anybody talking about Rupert annuals. So I thought if I do a video, like it'll be the only one. But I just thought there won't be much interest because I only talk about science fiction, but I should because I do have.
Well, you never know, and that's the thing, and it's you're interested in it, and that interest
Yeah,
will show through.
it's yeah, part of the fun is just hunting them down in thrift stores and stuff. But now that I've got almost 50, when I find them, it tends to be one I already have. So it's getting expensive to track them down and find them online. But it's fun to find them. It's fun to read them, and I just love the guy's artwork.
So you said it started in the 20s, but when did they start the annuals?
The annual started in 1936. So, and they were like these really nice quality leather bound, very large books. It did have a dust jacket, which I do not have one. God help you if you want a dust jacket, it'll cost you. They do make facsimiles of a large number of the years, but I didn't want a facsimile version. I wanted the real thing, and I finally got this beat up old copy for a decent price. But yeah, they still release them. I'm really only interested in the ones from the 70s and older, but I've got plenty from all over. But yeah, they still release them, and as far as I know, it's still in the Daily Express every day or month because they've had an author, well, an artist slash author from the 20s on. I think there's only been like 7 or 8 different authors of Rupert. Um, I think Alfred Bestel, who was from like 35 to 70 something, probably served the longest as the artist and basically made the Rupert world into what it is.
Yeah, I've never watched it. I never looked at it. I just know it exists. That's the thing.
Yeah, well, I would know about it if there wasn't a random Canadian cartoon in the 90s from, I think it was like 92 to 97 or something it was on. So I watched it as a kid, and yeah, I always had memories of it until a couple of years ago when I decided to look it up, and then I discovered, oh, it's actually a 100-year-old comic strip.
That's really cool. Like I say, you're gonna have to do some videos on that.
Yeah,
I find
I
it interesting.
I've got tons of them, and just the stuff inside. Like this one's signed by the kid who got it, wrote his name in it in 1936, probably on Christmas Day because he got it as a Christmas gift, and I just think it's so cool. And in the later ones, there's watercolor pages for you to do, and there's often some kid has done it from the 50s. It's just cool to have the art. Like on the final page, some kid in the 30s illustrated that or colored that in.
Oh wow.
I love it. But you're right. I should probably do a video on it because nobody else has.
Yeah, if it takes off, start a whole Rupert channel.
I could, yes. Help me track down these rare editions I can't find.
Yeah, why not? People do that. People do that, and
It is fun. It takes up a lot of space. I keep them in a legitimate comic book boxes because they fit so perfect. But yeah, I've just got tons. I'll probably have to do a video.
So that's your books. What about music? You to take along some music.
For music, I struggled with this one because music's not a major part of my life or anything. But often when I'm reading, I will put on random music. It could be anything from EDM, like modern electric music, or classical music. And this is what I chose. Basically, there's different versions of this, but basically any soundtrack to Studio Ghibli movies, which are a series of anime movies by Hayao Miyazaki. I think most of those movies are based off of books, novels, Uh, I have one. Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind is one of these anime movies, but based on this comic that Hayao Miyazaki did. This is a massive 2-book collection of it all. I'm really not great at showing it. Here we go. But the movies have just, first of all, they're beautiful, beautiful animated movies. There's nothing more beautiful than a Studio Ghibli movie. But the music is always so good. It's very dramatic. There's usually piano. And the soundtrack to these movies are just so good. They're great for having in the background when you're reading. So sometimes I have it in the background and I just thought, well, that's an obvious choice because I don't think there is like a band's album or anything that I could stand to listen to for the rest of my stranded days on an island. But that stuff's very melodic, very peaceful. I think it'd be perfect.
Yeah, well, it's a little different. My choice was Rush. So,
Yeah, well, hey, I don't mind Rush. Wait, you haven't done your Desert Island picks, have you?
yeah. Steve Donahue did me. Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna have to watch that. I didn't realize you had done that. I saw you did a video with Steve Donahue, but I thought it was his picks.
Yeah, him, and then as when we recorded his, he did me. So, and then I followed him the week after.
Well, I've
So
got the.
it's
I'm gonna have to watch that later. Rush, I love it. That's a great pick. I love 2112. That was maybe the first Rush song I heard, and it blew my mind. It's like 17 minutes long.
no, I chose Farewell to Kings. That was the one I chose, and 2112 would have been like a runner up for sure.
Well, it's got science fiction elements too, does it not? It's basically a future story about, isn't it like a post society Earth or something? I can't remember. There's a guy who finds a guitar and it's not allowed, right?
Yeah, well, it's like Canticle for Leibowitz to a certain extent. A bunch of other stuff put in, but
I haven't.
even uh, Farewell to Arms has Cygnus X1, which is science fiction. So
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, I thought that'd be a good choice. And I'll have to recommend you some of those movies at some point because they're good. And I know you're thinking anime, not my thing, but they're quite different. They're quite good. And that's, oh, I got my luxury
item. Yeah.
So luxury item. At first I thought, why not a ninth book? Hollowed out, inside, a knife, matches, compass. But then I thought, nah, Sean won't go for that. So then it's a toss-up between two things I couldn't decide between. Either a telescope or my cat. Now, would you consider a cat a luxury item?
Well, others have taken their dogs along, so.
Oh, have they? Okay. Because I thought, well, if I want to use a telescope, I think Scott Danielson chose that, so I could just swim to his island. But then you went ahead and you made it a multi-dimensional island, so I'm not sure how I get access to Scott's island.
Well, somehow doing Spencer, who basically does a sort of Blu-ray and classic film. Well, not just classic film, but he does books as well. But somehow he talked his way into having a portal so he could watch classic films.
Yes,
so there's a portal there somewhere.
Hard for that. Yeah, so maybe I'll take my cat for companionship, and then if I want to, use a telescope, because I think if I'm stranded on an island, a telescope would be an amazing pastime. Because I can't read at night; I don't have a light. What am I going to do? So I'll look at the stars, but I'll have to get access. I'll use that portal. I'll go hang out with Scott.
Yeah, I don't know if people. Well, now it's a portal that people can go through. No, it's just a portal that you can watch something.
Well, if he aims the portal at his telescope, I could still use. I don't know. I think if I had to choose one or the other, I'd probably choose the cat for companionship. And if times get really tough, I can eat her, I guess.
Oh, jeez.
I don't know how desperate times are getting on this island, but
What's her name?
Her name is Purslane, and that is a character from Alistair Reynolds' House of Suns, which I would say is probably his best novel. Well, no, I'd say Revelation Space is his best, and House of Suns is maybe my favorite. House of Suns is probably my favorite space opera. Um, and I would say if you like your read of Revelation Space, you should check that out. But Purslane's one of the main characters. I have 3 cats. They're all named after Reynolds characters, but Purslane seems like the most obvious because it's got Purs right in it.
And what are the names of the other ones?
The other ones are Maroka, and that's a character from Terminal World, which is a novel of his that nobody ever talks about. It's a standalone. It's basically about a society on a dying planet that's really, they're on their last legs, and it's about a doctor character. And Maroka is a character, kind of like an extraction specialist who gets the doctor out of the city. And the other one is Ilya, who's named after one of my favorite female characters ever from Revelation Space, Ilya Valyova, who basically is in charge of the spacecraft Nostalgia for Infinity because the captain is incapacitated. So yeah, I've always liked Reynolds, so named all my cats. Running.
That's a little different. Well, I had a cat that was named after a Kiss song, so I guess something like that.
What name would that be?
Shandy.
Oh, okay. I like it. Yeah. My each time I named a cat, my family and girlfriend are just like, really? That's pretty out there. I'm like, I'm sticking to it.
It works. So do you have anything upcoming on your channel that you're doing, or next year even, or anything that's sort of special that you're doing different? Or
well, as I said, my channel's only a year old, but I'm still fairly new to it. Like I have not done much other than book hauls and talking about what I'm currently reading, but I would like to do more book reviews in the future. I just find I'm not as articulate as I'd like to be, and memory is awful. But I would like to do that. I know we have some buddy reads coming up. You and I are going to read some Pamela Sargent, the Venus books, but I'm still waiting for the first. It has not arrived in the mail yet.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the third one, which is coming from the States, and yours is the first one's coming from here, I think, isn't it? Yeah.
And I haven't ordered the third yet, but I'm sure these are big books. By the time I order, it'll arrive in time. But a couple read-alongs. You've put the idea in my head to do some Rupert, some sort of dive into Rupert books and Rupert collecting, maybe.
Yeah, well, I think it'd be kind of cool because it is something that's different, and it's like it's not something I may want to, or like a lot of people may not want to collect, but they'll find it really interesting to look at.
Yeah, so. It's different, but I'm surprised there's nobody else talking about it online. And then another thing, we have our new book club starting in January. I'm sure there'll be
the New World Science Fiction Clifford D. Simak book club, right?
Some have called it that, yes. Yes, but the book club started by Scott, Becky, Bryant. The New World's SF book club. I'm sure I'll do videos on we read, and I know the Bryants are going to be doing live videos, and I'd like to take part in a couple of those, and maybe we'll have discussions on what we read. That'd be fun.
Yeah, they're booking up for months ahead. So I was going to say, oh, well, I'm available, May 16th or something like that, because that's about all you're going to get in, I think, actually. So no, that will be fun. I think that'll be fun doing.
Never been part of a book club, so it should be interesting. And ours is a little different with the element of surprise, right? We've all put something in, but most of us don't know what's in there.
Yeah.
So it should be exciting. And yeah, that's pretty much it. My channel's pretty haphazard. I don't have a posting schedule or anything, but it really took off. I mean, it's been a year, and I did not expect to get many subscribers or much interest. But there's a lot of interest for old SF, and that's pretty much what I focus on for the most part. The older stuff with newer stuff peppered in. So.
Yeah, I just need to get more Simac in there. That's all.
Oh, well, hold on. I've got a growing collection of book club edition Simac. I've read Way Station, which is probably my favorite.
Becky's just read that, and she really loved it. Which
yeah,
to hear.
She seems surprised, but
yeah,
such a good book. Here's one no one talks about that I've read and liked: Special Deliverance. That was different. And then
I enjoyed the robot in that. Yeah, it's the Shakespeare fan. It is really good. Yeah,
I think. Did this not have a robot, or was it just a creature that called himself Shakespeare? I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't think a robot. No.
But the one I'm looking forward to reading most next is Cemetery World. It just sounded really interesting.
Yeah, it's quite cool. It's exactly what it is. It's the Earth's a cemetery, but there's a mystery.
I don't want to speak for you, but I have a feeling we all may be reading Simac in the future. Who knows with the book club? Could happen.
I'm not saying what my
I'm not.
pick was.
I don't think you have to.
I think people will be surprised.
Yeah.
If it gets chosen, so
I'm sure it will. We all get chosen. I hope it's not the same couple people's books that just get chosen. I know there's a 3-month gap before you can get chosen again, but ideally we all get chosen in order 10 months in a row. That'd be cool.
No, yeah, I think it's going to be fun doing that. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to doing the Pamela Sargent Venus ones, and also a more general look at Venus as well. And then Mars after that.
Mars stuff with you, but another buddy read we may be in is S.M. Sterling's The Sky People. I believe that one takes place on Venus.
Oh, does it? Okay, yeah.
Yep, and then the sequel, I think, takes place on Mars. I'd have to read it again. If it does, that'd be perfect for our dive into Venus Mars stories.
Yeah, no, that would be cool. Yeah, because I've read a little bit of S.M. Sterling, but not much at all. Definitely not those.
Yeah, and this does take place on Mars. I think these would be appealing to you because he's written them specifically in an older, pulpy style. So I think the whole idea is just fun. Writing something through the lens of decades earlier.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of cool. Not everybody does, but we won't go there.
No, I don't have a problem with it.
Anyway, thanks very much, Matt, for joining me today, and this was great. And definitely do that Rupert video. Not just one video, several. I think you need several there to do it.
Yeah, I could break it down into different topics and different things to focus on for sure. Yeah, it would be interesting if there's actual interest, and I could draw it out for a few videos. Yeah, but yeah, it's fun collecting them and just looking at the art. Even if you don't read it, I just love the old art, the old English countryside. It's just like my peaceful, happy place.
Everybody needs that.
When I'm not reading about star battles and aliens and whatnot.
Yeah, everybody needs that.
Yeah.
So again, thank you very much, and everybody, we'll see you next time. Bye.